Hello, everyone. I'm Paul,
And I'm Michelle.
and you're in the
The
Spooky Coop. Welcome to the Spooky Coop. Hope you're not chicken. So, Michelle, what do you have for us today?
Ooh, I have some pretty good stories today.
Awesome.
I think you might like.
Awesome. What are they?
Well, the first one I got from one of our listeners. He told me to call him Cody when we talk.
Cody.
Yeah.
Hi, Cody.
Yeah, I think it's the name of his younger brother. He doesn't want anyone to know it's him.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, Cody goes to the University of Michigan. I think it's Michigan University. Doesn't matter. He goes to school up there. And when he was coming home for summer break this year, actually, he didn't come straight home. He stopped with a bunch of friends and they got some pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Now I hear he was telling me, best pizza ever.
In Michigan? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Anywhere you breeze anywhere near Chicago or Detroit, and it is the most fabulous pizza in the known universe.
Really?
Really, yeah.
Yeah.
Back in the day, Al Capone and the mob brought over the most fabulous chefs from Italy, and they put together the most spectacular pizzas known to humankind.
Seriously.
Seriously.
So this is what they found in Al Capone's vault when... Yeah, no wonder
Everyday
Geraldo
pizza.
didn't tell anybody. He said it was empty. So...
Yeah. It's all my pizza now.
So I think he said it was like up in Hillsdale or something like that.
Right, okay.
Anyway, so the guys...
We digress.
Yeah, so the guys were there, him and his friends, and they had some pizza, and maybe they imbibed a little. You never know.
Yeah.
And then he decided that he had to get going because the sun was probably going to be starting to go down.
You know, you got to get, before the zombies come out, you have to get going. You really do.
Especially the pizza zombies.
Yeah, especially.
Yeah. So
They use that, I think, as makeup on these things. You know, the different zombie shows. They just get pizza and throw it on people's faces, rip it off, and there you go. A decayed body.
Instant zombie.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we digress again.
We're
Sorry.
digressing again. I was just dreaming of pepperoni and mushroom pizza. So he decides to head home. I guess there's a lot of ways he could take home, but he's taken the straight highway drive to Detroit where he lives.
Right.
He told me it's like a 90-mile drive. It's not that bad. And on the highway, he can get there in a couple of hours.
Right.
So he puts on his favorite tunes and he hits the highway. And he kind of gets into the zone and everything. And he said that he came to the exit before the exit he had to get off at. And his brain said, oh my God, and snapped to it, thinking that was the exit he had to get off of.
Jumping out of a hypnagogic state.
Yeah.
With little time to think.
Yeah, and he got off at the
boom, there you are.
At the wrong exit. So... I think he told me, I should have written this down, but it was such an engrossing story at the time talking to him
Right.
that I wrote down a few notes here and there, and then I don't even think I remember what I did with them. So I believe he said it was Telegraph Road.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he grew up in that area, so he knew how to get home from Telegraph Road.
Right.
But he totally forgot that he had to go south, and he went north instead. Maybe still the effect
He
of the
forgot
pizzas. Who
to
knows?
go south.
What I think is that he just took the wrong, just got off the exit and said, "Oh, that's the way I'm supposed to go."
Yeah,
You know how you
okay.
just, if you haven't been someplace for a while.
He made a mistake. We
Yeah.
all do it. Everybody, every day.
Yeah. Well, I don't.
This was a
make
big one,
mistakes.
but that's okay.
I married you, so you make the mistakes. Once a woman's married, her husband takes on all her mistakes, no matter how many she makes.
Is that what happened?
Exactly.
That's why I feel
Isn't
this
it right,
way.
girls? So he went the other way. And I guess the other way, he said there's like restaurants and stuff like at fast food places, stores and things. And they're in both directions. So he thought he was on the right way.
Mm-hmm.
When he finally realized that he was going the wrong way and he knew he had to turn around, he drove a little way and he decided he wanted to turn around on his side. He didn't want to cross the traffic because he's like in dinner late dinner traffic and stuff.
Early evening.
Yeah, early
Yeah,
evening.
Gotcha.
type
Okay.
thing. So he decided to turn on his side. So he waited till he got to Sand Lot Cemetery or Sand something. Again, I didn't write it down, but the first word was Sand, S-A-N-D.
Gotcha.
And so he sort of turned in at the front of that, and he was going to turn around. He was waiting for the traffic. I guess this is a main road,
Right.
And when he was waiting for the traffic to go by, he noticed that the sun was just at the right angle, that it was shining on the stones. Some of them, I guess, were very old. Some of them were like newer and shiny.
Right.
And he looked over. He said there weren't many stones in there, but he looked over, and as he was looking at the shiny stones, he saw someone in the cemetery walking very quickly towards him.
Uh-oh.
The person was like in this old outfit type thing. He said it looked kind of like a suit, but it was baggy.
My creep factor is rising.
Yeah. He had like a high collar. He came closer and closer, and he stood at the edge of the cemetery, and the guy, who he felt was like at least twice his age, so 40, 45-ish, maybe 50, he just stood there and looked at him. So he rolled down his window, figuring the guy must have something to say. So electric windows rolled down.
The polite thing to do in the evening in the cemetery, somebody standing there staring at you.
Yeah, so
maybe
he was
staring bullets through you. Maybe trying to intimidate you.
Yeah, or wants something.
Wants something from you.
Yeah, so he rolled down his window and he's like, "Can I help you? You know, what do you want?" And the guy says, "I told you to get out of here." He was really angry. "I told you not to come here. I told you to get out of here."
Uh-huh.
And Cody's like,
"Time to go."
No, Cody's like, "What? What?" And Cody looks at him and says, "I've never been here before."
Still time to go.
Yeah. I would have gone.
Yep.
But the guy is standing there and Cody's looking at him.
Right.
And all of a sudden, he's gone.
Uh-oh.
Right as Cody's looking at him.
And there goes
No
Cody's...
puff of smoke, no dribble of ashes, no special effects. He's just there one second, and he's not there.
There goes Cody's paradigm.
Cody is so terrified that Cody just peels out, does a U-turn right into the traffic, and takes off. And then, only after he peels out into the traffic, he realized he could have killed himself and someone else.
Someone was watching over him.
Yeah, someone was watching over him because he didn't T-bone anybody. Nobody T-boned him. He didn't hit anybody or anything. He there was a clear spot for him just to pull out and get on the road.
Yeah.
His heart pounded all the way home.
I'll bet.
Until he got home to Detroit.
Right.
He said it was just horrible, and if his family didn't believe him, he would have died, because he was lucky that his family believed in this stuff, because it was so horrible for him. And he also told me he is never, ever going back, because his sister was like, "Let's go back. Maybe we can get this guy on camera. Maybe we can." And he's like, "No.
Not a chance.
You go do it.
Yeah.
You do it, sis. I'm staying here. This guy doesn't like me."
Yeah.
So that was Cody's story.
That is to see something and then all of a sudden for it not to be there, or the opposite way around, when there's nothing there and then something is all suddenly there. That does something to the human mind.
Yeah, it does something to your mind when, you're like, "Hey, hon, you're going to get some shoes?" And I come back, I get shoes, and I come back with huge bags of clothing. And so there's nothing there, and then I come back with a lot, and then you look at the credit card, and there was something there, and now there's nothing. Okay, it's not the same as a ghost, but it is something there one minute and nothing there the next.
So, is that the end of the story?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a story.
Well, actually, it's not the end, because I'm going to continue to spend your money. Go ahead.
It's our money. Anyway, my story is from Central Ontario, from the Watah Mohawk Reserve. And a woman, her name is Lucy, and her husband Terry.
Oh, that's Terry the medicine man.
Yes.
Now, is she a medicine woman then, or is she just, did they do that?
She may well be, but she never came out and said that to me.
Okay.
She's a very humble person. Anyway, her brother came to visit. He lived on a neighboring reserve in Quebec, and he was over visiting, and it was in the wintertime. And when he was over, the family, some of them were out snowmobiling. Beautiful countryside, lots of snow, middle of winter. And while they're out there, Terry, who lives on the reserve there, and his daughter were with the same machine. And his brother-in-law, we'll call him Bob. Bob was on the machine.
Not Cody.
Not Cody, no. Bob was on the machine behind them. And as they were coming up along the trail, Terry told me...
They were snowmobile machines.
Yes.
Okay.
Like ski-doos, remember? Da-da-da-da-da. Never. Anyway.
That's Batman.
Didn't he have a snowmobile too? The Batmobile snowmobile?
No, he did not.
Anyway, they came up on these lights, these orange balls of light that were dancing beside the trail as they were coming around a turn, and they pulled up and they stopped and they both looked at it for a minute, and then Bob came up behind them. They looked back at Bob, and Bob signaled, "Let's get going." He waved his arm and he said, "Let's go." And so they pulled forward, and he came up for a minute, and he stopped to look at it. He thought it was really kind of strange. It was the middle of winter, and the only thing that would cause lights like that would normally be fireflies. Fireflies are a little bit on the greenish side. They're not orange like what he was seeing. And these things seem to get greater in number. And
nobody had a fire burning, so they wouldn't be embers?
No, there's no fire nearby, no. And they circled like they were... intelligently controlled. They came over and they circled around him.
Tiny little, what do they call those things? Drones?
Drones. No, this is way before
Nano
drones.
drones.
Nano drones. Anyway, they were circling him. Mm-hmm. And as they were circling him, he was looking at it. He was a little bit overwhelmed, right? Trying to figure out what the heck is this, right? And all of a sudden, one of these little lights flew into him, into his stomach. And he looked at it, and he decided it's a good time to go. He's a little freaked out. He guns the machine, and he gets out of there, and he makes his way back to their house.
And now he's a zombie.
Yeah. No, he almost became one.
Really?
By the end of the story, you'll see. When he got back to the house, he came and they said he just... slowed the machine down and almost bailed from it to get off, which was very unlike him. He normally would park it and put it away carefully. Was very particular about that sort of thing. But he just slowed and bailed off it and just walked into the house. And
Batman found it.
And Batman found it. And he made his way into the house. And he went and sat down and just sat there and stared. And Lucy tells me he just looked straight ahead of him and for like an hour, and he said nothing. They asked him what happened, and he didn't say anything. And they thought, something happened to him. This is, he was something about these. Terry explained that they had seen these lights and they left, and something must have happened after he and their daughter had made it back to the house.
So nothing flew into them.
No.
Okay.
These lights were off by the side, right off to the trail. And when Bob stopped there, they all sort of circled and seemed to. He reported to them that they got later on that they seemed to get greater in number as they came around him, and then one of them just flew into him. And after about an hour, they sat there and they were talking, and it was some time. They looked over and they saw him looking up into a corner of the room, up at the ceiling level. And he was mouthing some words. He just seemed to be mouthing words quietly to himself constantly. And they went over and they were looking at him. They'd ask him a question and he wouldn't respond. And after a while, they finally got... Lucy said, "Look, you got to tell me what's going on. Who are you talking to? What's going on?" And he said, "I'm talking to them." And she said, "Who are them?" She said, "Who are them?" And he said, "They don't want me to say."
Oh.
Yeah. And so this went on. And he was there for 4 or 5 days. He stayed awake the whole time.
You're kidding.
Talking, mouthing words, talking to these whatever in a particular part of the house.
Did he have something to eat, like spaghetti and gold balls?
I don't know. I don't know. He did something to survive through those 5 days, but obviously he ate and did those sort of things. But he couldn't sleep. He kept seeing whatever it was he was seeing. And after 5 days, they decided they had to do something. He was getting worse and worse, and they realized that he wasn't sleeping. So they got him over to the local hospital. Hospital took care of him and got him, some rest and recuperative condition. And it took him a while to get better again. And then he went home to Quebec after that. Some time later after that, Lucy tells me she was talking to her brother, and she asked him about this, and he said, I think one day I would really like to come back and see my little friends again.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, after, Terry and I talked, and because Terry, he's the local medicine man for the Watchau there, and we sort of think that these little balls of light had something to do with a phenomena they call the little people. There are a few people up there.
Leprechauns. Indian leprechauns.
Indian leprechaun. But that's the interesting thing.
What?
Is that the Aboriginals report seeing Caucasian, red, brownish-haired people. The men have beards. I said to him, why don't they look like natives, like Umgwe-Humwe? This is what the Mohawk, they call themselves, Umgwe-Humwe. It means human being. They're called the Ganagi Gus, which means people of the flint. But when they're talking about other people, they might say hello by saying "Ego Umgwe-Humwe" or "Hello, human being." Anyway, I asked him why they didn't look like Aboriginals, and he said, I don't know. When I think about it, the stories everybody's told me is about seeing these little white people, which is a very curious thing. Because you'll hear about these little elves, or not, tiny little people around the world.
So do they get all the cookies?
They have all the cookies, they have all the gold, and I'll bet you they have all the lost socks and underpants.
I wish they'd find mine.
They have an evil plan. Anyway, Terry told me about other stories of little people on the reserve.
Really?
He told me he had even seen one.
Wow.
And he said it was, and what led us from the balls of light to the little people is because he saw the opposite. He saw a man, he was standing on a river, and he looked over and he saw a tiny little man. And the man looked at him for a minute. It seemed like a long minute to Terry. And all of a sudden he turned around and he ran up the bank.
Terry?
No, not Terry, the little man.
Oh.
And the little man, as he ran, was so fast, it was the leaves and plants, as he knocked against them, were like as he ran up the bank.
He did sort of a shaky leaf.
With my hand, yes.
Yeah.
So that you get it doesn't articulate well without the gesticulation. And once he reached the little man reached the top of the bank.
Vocabulary.
Once the little man reached the top of the bank, a ball of light came out of the plants and took off from there.
Cool.
So there we see the transmogrification that
I told you
takes
he
place.
was into vocabulary.
But it's an amazing story.
Yeah, it is.
It's a very curious thing. And, we have, as you know, we have collected a number of different stories and reports from people who have seen balls of light and little people over the years. So that's one that I'm going to tell for today. And
Awesome.
We'll save more for later on.
Okay, that's very cool. I have another story. Now, it doesn't involve balls of light or anything from a native reservation.
Space lasers?
Huh?
Space lasers?
No space
Zombies?
lasers. No zombies.
Sasquatch?
No, unfortunately. But I have another story that I have to tell.
You have to tell us.
Oh, well,
okay, good. That means it's a passionate, great story.
It should be.
It should be, okay.
Okay, one of our other listeners sent us this story. And I thought, wow, that's pretty good. So there's a woman named Grace.
Grace,
Right?
okay.
Nice
name.
And her name kind of is interesting to the story.
Why is that?
Because the story happens in Graceland.
Graceland.
Yeah, you know what Graceland is, right?
I do indeed.
Yeah, maybe some of our listeners don't, but Graceland is...
Elvis's home.
Right, Elvis Presley's home.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly. So Grace loves Elvis. She absolutely is head over heels, adores Elvis.
She was a fan from way back when, wasn't she?
Yeah.
She was young.
Yep. She loved Elvis since her older sister started bringing home his records when they first came out.
Vinyl.
Yeah. Actually, her mother even started bringing them home.
Bet.
They
Vinyl. Everybody loved Elvis back then.
Yeah. Elvis started making records like what, in the 50s?
Mm-hmm.
And her sister and her mother were big Elvis fans, and then she became a big Elvis fan. Always wanted to go to an Elvis concert, and she couldn't,
Yeah.
And then Elvis passed away in 1977.
God rest his soul.
Yeah. I don't know, because his soul seems to still be hanging around.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. What happened? She got really, really depressed. She was like in high school or something in 77, like a sophomore in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
She got really, really depressed after Elvis died.
Her hero. Her hero passed away.
She said she cried. She couldn't even go to school. She was crying for like 4 days.
Yeah.
And her life was never the same after that. She always, always missed Elvis. She had posters. She had, you name it.
Oh, she was heavily invested in Elvis.
Yeah, she had...
Emotionally, mentally, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, even as she grew up, even her husband was sick of Elvis when she got married. He'd say, "You love Elvis more than you love me."
That's right, honey. I do.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't even think she had to tell him.
Mm-hmm.
There were more pictures of Elvis in the house than.
A telltale sign of a fanatic. Yeah, okay.
I think they had 4 or 5 kids, and they never really made a lot of money or anything. So, and with all those kids, I think most of their mad money was going to Elvis paraphernalia. Anyway, so she told me that life was kind of tough, but as the kids grew up and moved out, they started putting money aside for a big vacation for their 30th or 40th anniversary. And of course,
they're going to Graceland.
They went to Graceland.
Of course they're going to Graceland.
He loves her. He's taking her to Graceland.
You're darn right. Happy wife, happy life. You get that lady to Graceland.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. To see the other man in her life.
Perfect. Yeah.
Perfect.
Security. Mm-hmm. Makes you feel just warm inside with your relationship.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so they go to Graceland.
Right. He loved her. He was a sweetheart.
Yeah, he was a sweetheart. So they go when they're in Graceland, they get the whole big package. I guess
not cheap.
Not cheap.
Not cheap. Mm-hmm. Bet it's in the thousands.
Oh, probably
multiple thousands.
She didn't tell me, but she said she went for the whole big package. Now, while they're there, they do things like they get to tour Elvis's private planes. Mm-hmm. They get to see where he and his mother are buried right behind Graceland. They get to tour
the big house.
Oh my God, it's a big house.
Yeah.
She said she was disappointed that she couldn't go on the second floor.
Right.
The second floor is closed off from tourists.
Oh, kids' bedrooms?
Yeah. His daughter's bedroom.
Right.
His private bedroom. I guess his daughter, and, might still use it. I don't know. I don't know if she's still alive. But
regardless, it's a private area that's closed off.
Yeah, it's a private area. Yeah. It's also his bedroom and also the bathroom where he died. So they don't want people going up there. Mm-hmm. It's like a historical place now. And but the downstairs area has lots of rooms, and only people with a certain package get to go in there.
Right.
And I guess she had some sort of VIP package where it was a small group that toured.
Right.
So, but that means something.
Okay.
Because the bigger group, they push them through real fast.
Ah,
okay?
I got
And you have to wait a long time. So she was in a group of like 8 people, and they get much more intimate with details, and they get to look at things closer.
Nice, yeah.
So while they were in the music room, Oh, and it's so funny because when they got in the house, she said to her husband, I really feel like Elvis is here. I can feel Elvis's presence. And her husband said, how do you know it's Elvis? You never felt him in real life before. How can you feel him? How do you know it's Elvis and not indigestion?
Oh, faith, Harry. Have some faith, Harry.
Yeah, I mean, he loves her on one side, but on the other side, you could tell he's jealous.
Yeah.
You can't blame the man.
So what happened next?
Okay, so they're taking a tour, and when they get into the music room, she's still feeling this feeling like she can feel Elvis around.
Something's around.
Yeah.
I sense it.
Yeah, and so she's standing, and they're talking, and she feels like everyone's leaving to the next room, and she feels like someone's standing behind her.
Ooh.
And
Hair on the back of my neck just stood up.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but she doesn't feel like someone's staring down at her in a booga 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 way.
Oh, okay.
She feels more like someone's just waiting for her to move or something, or
Right.
waiting for her to see them so she could talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
So she turns around and she sees this person. She's thinking it must be an Elvis impersonator. This person, though, looks exactly like Elvis.
Terrific actor.
Yeah, exactly like the Elvis she
Right.
remembers from all the posters and records she has and everything. She looks at them and she says, my God, you look just like Elvis.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
Okay.
what he said. And then he said, that's very kind of you, ma'am. Welcome to my home.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, wow, you even sound like Elvis. You are amazing. And he tipped his hat, and that made, and he didn't, it looked like he blushed, like he didn't exactly know what to say
Right.
after she told him he was amazing.
Yeah.
And she was just so overwhelmed. And she said, can I hug you? It would be like hugging the real Elvis.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, yes, ma'am, I'd be honored.
Right.
So she felt like
So
she
did
could
she
feel,
hug him? You got me on the
she
edge of my
felt like
seat
she
here.
could feel he was like the real
Right.
It felt like the real Elvis to her.
Yeah.
So she thought if she just thought really hard that this impersonator was the real Elvis.
Right. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when she hugged him, she got that intense feeling of wonder and healing and this idea of I'm holding the real Elvis.
Right.
But then she realized she had her arms around her own arms, like she had like she was hugging herself.
She hugged a phantasm.
She hugged. He loves his vocabulary. She hugged Elvis's ghost.
Wow.
Because she had her arms around him and he wasn't there.
Amazing.
And she knew, and she had tears running down her eyes, and it was such a profound experience. And at that moment, all the depression she had had in her life, all this sense of loneliness, all the sense of loss, all this sense of what she felt was just having to live a bad life, that she felt she was jinxed or something, was gone. And then,
I was just going to say, was it a hallucination or a ghost? But it doesn't matter. If that's what the end result was, that it relieved her suffering,
it was
then it doesn't matter. That's amazing.
totally believe it was a ghost, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But at that very minute, it didn't last long, because at that very minute, the woman who was bringing the tour around came back and said to her, "We have to stay together." And then her husband came back with her and said, "Come on, Grace, come on, we got to move." So she went, and she doesn't really remember much of anything because she was so into that. But the reason why I say I know it's Elvis's ghost is because Elvis's ghost has been seen on that property by a lot of different people.
Yes.
And several times groups of people.
Right.
He has been seen near his grave in the back. Well, technically near his mother's grave. He's also been seen in the yard. At one point, people had seen his face in some tree leaves. I know that there's pareidolia, which is seeing faces in inanimate objects, like
or patterns or
patterns
clouds,
and stuff.
things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you look up in the cloud and you see an elephant or something.
Right.
But these two trees, that day, these leaves came together and it formed a perfect profile of Elvis.
Okay.
And you can find that picture on the
I love
internet.
pareidolia.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool.
You can, but it's not just plain pareidolia. It looks like a snapshot.
Right.
And there are pictures of Elvis looking out windows in the house, and they are amazingly perfect. It looks like somebody took...
Photoshop?
Yeah, it could have been Photoshop, but it's not, because there were a lot of people who took the same picture from different angles.
Uh-huh.
So if it were Photoshopped, somebody had a three-dimensional model they put in there or something.
Okay.
There are all kinds of pictures of Elvis, and there are amazing stories. There was a story on the same day by several people who saw someone who looked like Elvis, young Elvis, like she saw him with the leather coat and the pants and the blue jeans, walking down the road to Graceland. And three different people, more than a lot of people saw him.
Young impersonator?
Most people thought he was an impersonator and drove by.
Right.
Some people, three different groups of people that day, picked him up because he was hitchhiking.
Ah.
And those three groups of people thought he was an actor and he had some way to go to get to Graceland, a little way. So they picked him up and they thought they'd just drop him off. Two of the groups, well, all three groups, he talked to them, and he talked like he was...
I could picture him walking down the road with his guitar.
Yeah, well, he didn't have a guitar. He was just hitchhiking.
Oh, okay.
But they all picked him up, and he talked just like Elvis, and he said Elvis's things.
Right.
So they figured he was staying in character. Right. One of them sang, and they thought he was staying in character, but he sounded just like Elvis. So they all thought they had an Elvis impersonator in their car. Even no matter how much he said he was Elvis, they figured he was staying in character.
Right.
Until all three of them, at different times, dropped him off and said, "Have a good day, blah, blah, blah." And he wished them a good day, and then he walked right through the metal gates.
Ooh. Closed or open? I gather by your laughter it was closed.
It wouldn't be special if they were open.
Just needed to clarify.
Yeah. He walked right through the metal gates, right through the closed metal gates. And when he got to the other side, he disappeared.
Ooh.
All three of them reported
Spooky.
that.
Wow.
Spooky. Yeah. Elvis has been seen in other places, some of the theaters he played and things like that. But these Graceland sightings kind of confirm that the fact that this happened to her, it was a ghost.
I bet it's because so many people love Elvis. They just can't let his spirit go, and it keeps coming back.
It could be, or Elvis loved his fans so much, or he loved Graceland so much.
Or all of the above, yeah.
But I'll tell you one thing, it changed her life.
That's
and
awesome.
She really wanted to tell us she saw Elvis's ghost. Remember that song, "I saw Elvis in a UFO"?
I think we have a story about that down the road.
Yeah.
But that's for another time.
That's for another time. When you start throwing Elvis into UFOs, oh boy. But there are some really, really cool stories coming. The chickens are typing them up as fast as they can. They'll put them in an egg, and we crack it open, thinking we're getting breakfast, and we get a new story every time.
So that does it this week, folks.
And we'll see you again
next time
in the
Spooky Coop.